Hi everybody, it's Kasha Dupuy from the Niagara-on-the-Lake Public Library. How are you on this lovely Wednesday morning? Thanks for tuning in again. It is Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock, so that means it is time for STEAM Storytime. So every single week we meet here virtually on our Facebook page for a live stream for STEAM Storytime. If you don't know, STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering or Environment, Art, and Math. So every single week we explore different topics and different areas of interest within STEAM ideas. And this week what we're going to do is we're going to look at sea animals. So we're going to read one of our favorite books. They're always our favorites. We're going to read a book called Mr. Seahorse. We're going to talk about the ways that different animals carry their eggs, different fish carry their eggs. And then I'm going to show you a really simple but really fun way to make a underwater scene using some art materials. So we're going to do the environment and we're going to do the art portion of STEAM today. Yes, so thanks all for joining us. I'm very excited to get started. It is just 11:01. We also have our new technology that we're using. So we're using our new webcam again. We're using the new microphone. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to try some new things with it today. They probably won't look that different to you, but it's a little bit different for me. So bear with me, please. You always do. And thank you for that. Okay, so let's switch over to the camera. Just like so. Okay. Hi, everybody. A few other things I forgot to mention. Because it's so hot today, sometimes my internet is a little bit silly because of the heat. We're not sure why. But just in case I do drop, don't worry, I will be back. I think we've solved that problem though. So we should be okay. Also, like every other week, and I'm still home just like many of you are, my boys are here. They're watching something hilarious in the background, so you might hear them laugh. And then my dogs are here. They're both outside enjoying the heat because they like that. But if they need to come in, because they'll bark if they need to come in, I'll just have to put the mic down for a second, go let them in. And they'll probably come on camera to visit. But other than that, we can get started with this week's STEAM Storytime. So again, my name is Kasha Dupuy. I'm from the Niagara-on-the-Lake Public Library. And every single week we meet here for STEAM Storytime at 11 o'clock, live on our Facebook page. So this week, what we're going to be talking about is our sea animals. So not all the sea animals, because there are thousands and thousands and probably millions of sea animals, but we're going to talk about a few that are in this book. And this is called Mr. Seahorse, and it's written and illustrated by Eric Carle. So you might recognize this kind of artwork. There's the very hungry caterpillar that a lot of you might be familiar with. So that's the same person that wrote and did the pictures for Mr. Seahorse. He has many books, and they're really great. So Mr. Seahorse was published in 2004 by Philomel Books. So thank you very much for letting us use this awesome book in our STEAM Storytime today as we learn about some sea animals. So let's get started. Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle, published in 2004 by Philomel Books. Now, Mr. Eric Carle did all these pictures in the book. Aren't they beautiful? I love them. They look really pretty. Okay, Mr. Seahorse, Eric Carle. Let's get started. Yep, new camera. There we go. Mr. and Mrs. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mr. Seahorse began to wiggle and twist this way and that. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Oh yes, thank you," said Mrs. Seahorse. And she laid her eggs into a pouch right here on Mr. Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr. Seahorse. "I promise." Yeah, so Mrs. Seahorse lays the eggs because most fish and sea creatures come from an egg under the water, but Mr. Seahorse is the one who carries the eggs in this little pouch right here. So make sure you watch this part in the book. Let's see what happens. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by, I love this part, a group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. So these ones, look at, they're kind of standing on their nose. They're called trumpet fish, probably because they look like a trumpet. Some fish have very strange names. We might see a couple of them in here. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Stickleback?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr. Stickleback. "I just built a nest, and right away Mrs. Stickleback laid her eggs into it. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. So let's talk about this for a second. Mr. Seahorse is taking care of the eggs here on his belly, right? Mr. Stickleback is also taking care of the eggs that Mrs. Stickleback laid, but this time he has a nest. So he made a nest, and that's where the eggs are, and he's going to protect that nest until the babies are born. Ooh, another one of these cool pages. Ready? As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Look at that crazy fish. I've seen a lionfish in real life. They're huge, they're beautiful, but apparently they can be kind of poisonous. Let's see what happens next. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Tilapia?" asked Mr. Seahorse. Mr. Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know, said Mr. Seahorse. "Mrs. Tilapia laid her eggs. Now you are taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr. Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. So this is a different kind of fish called a tilapia fish. And instead of, laying eggs on a belly or laying eggs in a nest, this fish, the Mr. Tilapia, will actually hold the eggs in his mouth. He doesn't eat them, but he keeps them safe in his mouth until they hatch. That's interesting. Okay, let's see what happens next. Ooh, it's another one of these. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by several leaf fish hidden among the seaweed. So let's see, these are called leaf fish, and Eric Carle made them look kind of like the leaves on this page, so they would camouflage. Maybe that's why they got their name, because they look like leaves. Leaf fish. Let's see what happens next. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Curtis?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," replied Mr. Curtis. Mrs. Curtis, laid her eggs, and I have stuck them on my head. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "You are doing a good job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. So this fish is called a Curtis, and the place that they take care of their eggs is on his head. Could you imagine having eggs on your head until they hatch? That would be crazy. But it works for the Curtis fish. Now look at Mr. Seahorse. Is he getting a little bit bigger? Maybe the eggs are growing and the babies are getting ready to hatch. Let's see. As Mr. Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by a stonefish hidden behind a rock. So cool. Look at that stonefish. Probably called the stonefish because it kind of looks like a stone. Okay, let's see what happens next. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Pipe?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr. Pipe. "Mrs. Pipe laid her eggs along my belly. Now I am taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. So this is a pipefish, and he takes care of eggs by having them stuck on the bottom of his belly. Interesting, kind of like Mr. Seahorse, kind of. Look at all the different ways that fish can take care of their eggs. But before long, Mr. Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr. Bullhead?" asked Mr. Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr. Bullhead. Mrs. Bullhead laid her eggs and the eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You are doing a fine job," said Mr. Seahorse, and swam on his way. So, Mr. Bullfish didn't really take care of the eggs, but he's taking care of the babies. He's parenting them. He's taking care of them, making sure nothing bad happens to them. He's a cool looking fish. I like the colors in that fish. It's time. Let's see. The time had come for the seahorse babies to be born. Mr. Seahorse wiggled and twisted this way and that. At last, the babies tumbled from Mr. Seahorse's pouch and swam away. Look at that. Doesn't it look so cool? One baby turned around and tried to come back into the pouch. Oh no, said Mr. Seahorse. I do love you, but now you are ready to be on your own. The end. Okay, so that was Mr. Seahorse by Eric Carle, published in 2004 by Philomel Books. Thank you again for letting us use this in our STEAM Storytime today. So we learned about all different kinds of fish and how they take care of their eggs before they become babies, right? Before they hatch. So I'm going to put this book right over here. And I actually went on the internet and I did a search. I did a search and I found pictures of the actual fish that we talked about. So there's Mr. Stickleback, Mr. Pipefish, Mr. Curtis, and there's one more. But I can show you the images that I found. So let's see. So this is the new technology I'm talking about. Okay. So these are some of the first ones that we found. So actually on the left, there is Mr. Stickleback fish. So that was the fish that made a nest and put the eggs. Mrs. Stickleback laid the eggs in that nest. Can you see them right at the bottom there? Yeah. So those little tiny white clear things with little black dots, those are fish eggs. And Mr. Stickleback is taking care of his nest with the babies in it, with eggs. Beside that is Mr. Tilapia, and that's the fish that kept the eggs in his mouth. Remember, he couldn't talk to Mr. Seahorse? So the safest place, Mr. Tilapia feels like the safest place for his fish, for his babies, are to be kept safe in his mouth. And he doesn't eat them. He keeps them there to keep them safe, and then when they're ready to hatch, they all fly out of the mouth, just like that. That picture showing them flying out of the mouth. Isn't that kind of cool? Do you guys hear the dogs running around in the background? Oh, I think it's playtime. Okay, so let's see what the next one is. So our next fish that we talked about are pipefish and Curtis fish. So pipefish, if you remember, that's that long one with the black and white stripes that go up and down. They're actually kind of red, but it might not show on the camera. Those are the fish that keep the eggs at the belly. So Mr. Pipefish will keep the eggs along his belly, just like that. They're little pink ones that you can see. And then beside that, there's Curtis. Mr. Curtis fish. It looks like he's got like a kind of poofy top to his head, but those are actually eggs that he's keeping on top of his head. So that's the one. Could you imagine carrying eggs at the top of your head until they hatched? That would be crazy. So I have one more to show you. And this is a real picture I found of a Mr. Seahorse with brand new babies that are hatching. Brand new ones. Look at all those babies. Now, fish eggs are very, very, very small. So often you'll see so many babies like that. Look at all those babies. That's so many of them. So that little pouch, if you can see, it's white, and it will, that's where he holds all of, oh my goodness, that's where he holds all of the eggs, just like that. Okay, so let's look at those for a little bit longer. I'm actually just going to switch the camera so that you can see the cool, simple STEAM activity we're going to do. And I see that I moved all my stuff. So just give me 2 seconds, everybody. Sorry about that. Can everyone hear the dogs playing? I'm not sure. We have that new technology that I talked about, and I'm thinking that you might not be able to hear them like before, which is very exciting for me. Okay, so that's the Seahorse. Let me just move the cord. Oh, puppies. Okay. Okay, so let's switch over here. Okay, so there's my piece of paper. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a super cool underwater scene using different materials. And these actually have something called a resisting character to them. So what we're going to do is you're going to need some pastels or some crayons. I have pastels here. You're going to need some water. You can get a paper towel if you need it. You don't need to have one, but I like having one just in case. You're going to need blue food coloring or blue watercolor paint. And I'm going to put a few drops in a little container. We don't need very much. I'm only going to do maybe 4 or 5 drops, just like that. And then if you want to add some extra texture, I have some salt. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use that. Okay? Oh, and a brush. You need a brush. And this one's called a fan brush. And you know what? Because of today's story, it actually looks like a fishtail. Doesn't it look kind of cool? Okay. 1 second, everybody. I'm going to go close that door so the puppies... Sorry about that, everybody. And the mic fell off. Remember, every single week I say I'm learning still. Okay, so let's get started with our STEAM activity. So this is the art side of today's activity. So what we're going to do first, we don't need the painting stuff. What we need are the pastels. So I'm going to get some pastels and I'm going to draw an underwater scene. So I'm going to start with some sand. And kind of like Eric Carle, who's an illustrator, I am going to make my scene look a little bit loose today. So not perfectly straight lines. It's going to have a watercolor effect. And actually watercolors are what Mr. Carle, Eric Carle, used in his artwork. So all of these really soft colors that blend together, and even these in the background, they're kind of see-through and soft. Those are called watercolors. So we're going to make a watercolor underwater scene. Okay. So I have my sand here. I'm not going to draw any water because we're going to paint the water, but I'm going to draw some seaweed, just some squiggly lines, just like that. And you know what, I'm going to put some more here, just like so. And then I'm going to make some fish. So I'm going to make some yellow fish here, just really simple. I'm going to make another one here. And I'm going to make another one here. Now, another thing about this project is that you don't have to have perfectly straight lines at all, because one thing about seeing things in water, and here's some engineering kind of math stuff, is that water will change the way that you can see stuff, right? It will change the way that you see things underwater. So don't worry if it's not perfect, because maybe it's the water doing that silly, thing to our eyes. So I'm going to make a really quick seahorse. So just like this, and he had that little thing here. And let's say it's a dad seahorse, so it's going to have a big pouch, and then his tail is going to come up like this. So I'm just trying to show you this really quickly, everybody. Take more time if you're going to do this. You can do this as well and put in as many different elements as you want to this really cool thing. That looks kind of like a bird. Let's make this a little bit wider. Yeah, so it looks more like a horse. And sometimes seahorses have this on top too. Maybe that look more like a seahorse. Yeah. Okay, so I'm also going to do, what's another kind of fish? Let's do some little tiny blue fish up here. And even though we're doing blue water, you can still see this kind of blue along that one there. Now when there's a group of fish together, does anyone know what it's called? It's called a school of fish. Yeah. Just like you're kind of clumped together at school. Not clumped together. You're all together learning the same stuff. So that's kind of what this is going to be doing. Now, another thing you can do if you have white is you can take white and put some bubbles, some little dots to look like bubbles. I'm just going to do a few just to show you. Okay. So I created a really quick underwater scene. You can put as many different creatures as you like into it. But what we're going to do next is the fun part. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to get some water. And I'm going to mix it into my food coloring. And it's actually going to turn my water pretty blue. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to paint over all of our spaces just like that. And see how the crayons resist the paint? So did you see what I did there that time? I didn't even take more paint. I just took some water and I started to blend out the... Oh, see, there's those little bubbles. I started to blend out the food coloring that I already put on there. So see how it's kind of sitting on top of the wax here of the oil pastel? Water and oil don't mix. So if we try to put watercolor paint on top of oil pastel, it's just going to sit there. Now the other cool thing you can do with this, remember when I put the blue on, it was really dark? I'm going to do a dark spot here just to show you. I think that's too dark. Oops, but guess what? I can take more water and start to blend it out just like so. Ooh, can you see that cool texture we get when all the watercolor sits on top of the pastel? It's really neat. Okay, so why do I have the salt? Well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to put some more water here. And you know what? I'm going to put a little bit more blue just in there. See, I'm just kind of dabbing it. It looks maybe like a darker or deeper spot in the ocean. I'm going to take some salt, just like that, and I'm going to dab it on like so. And you see how it kind of looks like bubbles? Yeah. Once it dries, don't try to take it off now, but once it dries, it will actually have a really cool texture. And those will look like tiny little bubbles in different kind of areas in the ocean. Another thing you can do is you can put some salt down first. Everybody here, Finn? He's usually my really well-behaved puppy. Not today. He's like, Mom, I want in now. Silly Finn. Sometimes you can put water right on top of salt. So look, we have made a really cool piece of art that looks kind of like Mr. Eric Carle's artwork. He has a lot more practice. He is a true artist and he has practiced and practiced and practiced. We are just learning, and that's okay. Maybe one day Eric Carle made a painting just like this, right? So that is something really fun that you can do at home by practicing with some of your pastels and watercolors. And if you want, you can make a purple ocean. You can do your ocean whatever color you wish. So I'm just going to switch over to this for a second just so I can reset the camera, everybody. So don't worry. We'll be right back. But yeah, think of the different kind of animals and sea creatures that you can put on your in your sea scene, in your underwater scene, just like so. Oh, that would make me upside down. I don't think anybody wants to see me upside down. Oh dear. Well, let's see. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. I hope you had fun. We talked about sea creatures, the way that different fish, different male fish, actually Mr. Fish, carry and take care of eggs that they want to hatch into babies. We looked at pictures of those fish in real life, and we learned how to make a super cool underwater scene using food coloring, pastels, salt, and water. So if you make one of these underwater scenes, I would love, love, love to see your work. So you can send me an email with a picture of it at kdupuis@notlpl.org, or you can tag us in a social media post that you make at NOTL Library. And if you have any feedback or comments or questions or suggestions, please let me know. Send me an email, kdupuis@notlpl.org. Can you hear the puppies? They must be ready to come in. So that means my time is done today. Okay, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday afternoon, everybody. And we will see you next week for our next team story time. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great Wednesday. See you later.